and welcome to The Impossible. I am your co-host, Austin, and today, for another Parts Unknown, I wanted to take a deeper dive and almost a bit of a recollection, a bit of a journey back in time to the week that I had to go through the bone marrow transplant chemo regimen. And this was a time period of December 2nd to December 7th of this past year, 2024. And a little bit of the preparations that I had going into it, kind of the week before, the weekend before especially, what I was going through physically, mentally, spiritually as well, emotionally. So no better time to start than now. So again, like I said, day 1 for chemo, or in this case, day -7 for the actual treatment itself, was December 2nd, and this was a Monday, and it was 6 days of chemo in a row, 2nd to the 7th. And I had quite some time to think about what that meant precisely. So those of you who know, but those of you who don't, I had gone down to Houston for my second relapse in the attempt to avoid this type of treatment, this bone marrow transplant. I had went down to Houston for a CAR T-cell therapy, and it only had 3 days of chemo. That was an immunosuppressant regimen. The bone marrow transplant comes with a wipe everything out regimen. And so I had I'd read up a lot into the bone marrow transplant itself. I read a lot of testimonies from individuals who had gone through it, and so I was well aware of what needed to occur before going into such a scenario, and so when I had gone down to Houston, it somewhat slipped off the mind. I had other things. I was going through a completely different treatment, but those stories had kind of slipped my mind because I thought that I was not going to have to go through with it. And this is back in January of 2024. I was going through this, and going into February and March, coming out of the Houston treatment, getting back up here, getting back to the groove of things, I really thought that I had missed it. And so I didn't think about it, kind of spring into the summer until about August time is where I had realized things were not right. And then September is when I had, came back home and tested and found out that I had relapsed again. So that is where I had to dive back in to the stories, to the situations, to the experiences of others to try to best prepare myself for this type of treatment, this grandiose of an endeavor. And so coming into the preparatory chemo for the bone marrow transplant is what I had gone through October, late September, and then all throughout October was, we've already talked about this previously, but I had to go through 2 cycles of Pembro plus GVD, and the GVD were 3 different chemos, and they were heavy hitter chemos. Went through a lot of unfortunate circumstances with those chemos, especially the D part of it, the liposomal doxorubicin. I actually had a anaphylactic shock reaction to the drug itself, and found that out on the first day. And my oncologist came into the room after I had the reaction and everything was stable, and told me that we have to continue on. This drug, we cannot take it out. It's a crucial part. All three of them are. And that we're going to have to slow down the rate of which it is put into my body from 1 hour to 2 hours. So my 6-hour day turned into a 7.5-hour day, basically. And so going through that was already making the sort of, stem cell transplant, this bone marrow transplant, a bit of a rough ride, kind of mentally and spiritually there from there on. So we get closer. I'm done with the introductory chemo regimen to pembro GVD, and the PET scan comes back that I am, I'm ready to go through with the bone marrow transplant. And this is November. And so November time is really where I had to gear up in all four aspects of life to go through the hardest month, but for this moment, week of my life. 6 days, but we'll call it a week. And so for November, on the daily, I had to sit down with myself and really, really be honest with myself, knowing that I was not going to be able to hide from anything. There are realities that I had to face, that I was going to have to face, that I couldn't avoid. And ultimately, if I wanted to live, this is what had to happen. There was no going back. I have to really dig deep and find the Austin that is going to be able to face this, to confront this, and battle through it without any hesitation and with full force. So we gear for what is this? The end of November. So the last week of November, I had to go in and collect my stem cells. So this portion here wasn't too rough, physically. I did have to go through medication that basically forces your bone marrow to overproduce stem cells. And then one day I had to take a medication that basically told the stem cells to stay within the bloodstream instead of being turned into a red blood cell, white blood cell, or an immune cell. It basically forced the stem cells to stay into the bloodstream as they were. And this was a very difficult time from that evening of taking this particular medication going into the actual collection, because I had unknowingly to the hospital. I left after the delivery of the medication, and I was fine in the observation period afterwards, but unfortunately I had an adverse reaction on the drive back to a friend's house, and had to stop at a CVS and grab Benadryl and immediately take it. I tore that box open pretty quick, sitting in the vehicle in the parking lot, because I could tell that I was losing the ability to breathe. It wasn't quickly, but it was slowly onsetting, and that was an interesting experience. But then the next day I didn't feel too bad and went in for collection. Took 2 days of collection instead of one, unfortunately, but that's fine. We collected just above the goal amount of stem cells. The count that we wanted was 5 million, and I collected 5.46 million. So that had gone smoothly. So that was Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday's Turkey Day, and then I had I had Thanksgiving Day and onward until Monday off. And this time here was difficult for me because a lot out of all that prep that I had done, that I had completed throughout the month of November, really had its first test on that weekend on November 30th and December 1st. Those 2 days I was shaken. I was shaking to my core from what was about to happen, and this was the first true test of my mental preparedness and readiness for this. I remember sitting in the hotel room the night before, and I wanted to go to bed, but that seemingly didn't intend on happening. My mind racing like a lost hamster in a wheel, just spinning round and round and round and round and round and round. And in this moment, as I'm staring up at the ceiling of the room, it was a high ceiling, thankfully, so I had a bit of a open area for observation. I feel that anxiety. I feel that stress. I feel that worry and concern really, really sinking its claws into me. And then it turned into a pivotal moment where I was able to grab onto those emotions and really hold on to them, experience them, not let them run loose, not let them just go on a free-for-all temper tantrum, within my mind and body in that matter. I was able to really understand and really focus on those emotions to give me some sort of insight into the gravity of the situation that I had at hand, that I was trying to prepare for. We can always over prepare so we don't underperform, and I must say that seemed to have worked. I was able to get to sleep that night. Only slept for 4 hours, but I was still able to get to sleep as I sat there really lassoing in all of those different emotions, and some positive ones as well that were certainly going at it as well. I mean, that there was a lot of conflict that I had in that evening, but I fought through, calmed down, got to sleep. And then it was day -7, Monday, December 2nd, that we had to go in and start the chemo. Now, the chemo that I had gone through, I'm not going to be able to recite their names. I should have written them down. I apologize. But the 4 different ones that I was going to be enduring has the acronym BEAM, BEAM, and it was broken down to where I wasn't going to have all four for all 6 days. If that were the case, things would turn out a heck of a lot worse. So we started off with the B and the E, and for Monday, and this day was about 6.5 hours. That tended to be the average for the week, except for the last couple of days. But we go in, it's a 6.5 hour day, and for this day here, I do get to see my oncologist, and then I do have a daily visit from my BMT nurse, and I'm geared up, ready to go. I really was able to carry that momentum from the prior evening in the hotel into day -7, into Monday. And this I'm thankful for because it was able to carry me through the rest of the week. But for Monday, we get in there and the pre-treatment begins. I've got my headphones. I have my Impossible Performance tank top on, because I had to have a tank top because I had a central line sticking out of my right pec, and so couldn't wear clothes like this while getting this done. So I had a tank top on, and I knew that having that tank top, that particular one, was also going to help me tremendously, because it was our Founders Collection Impossible Performance tee tank top. And having that on really gave me the opportunity to remember continuously and repeatedly that I had this community with me. Everyone here at Impossible Performance and you were beside me. Not just this day, but every single day I wore that tank top. I knew that I had the support of many beside me. I was not alone in that chair. And this was something that I'm extremely grateful for now, but I was more than grateful. It was crucial to be wearing that and to be able to have that remembrance in those moments. Because we go into day -6, day -5. It's Tuesday and Wednesday. And again, like I said, these were about 6 to 7 hour days as well. We moved out of the BE and we got to the E and the A. And this was, I was still feeling fine, but I knew that my body knew some nasty poison, basically, was within the body, and that something drastic was happening and was about to happen. It was not only mentally now at this point, it was physically that I was starting to feel just a bit off. But nothing drastic was happening at this moment. I wasn't having a reaction to anything, thankfully. So I was certainly thankful for that. But getting into Thursday was a very difficult day because it was the longest day. And I had my mother there. She was there for this entire process as well. And again, that's a whole nother discussion, is talking about your caretaker. Caretakers are, their state of readiness is just as crucial, if not more crucial, than yours, if you are the patient. So it was, kudos to her as well, just for getting through those days, because it was I was, I have to admit, although I was well aware and well understanding of the gravity of the situation, sitting in the same chair for 7 hours can get slightly boring. So I have to be honest. Can get a bit, monotonous. And so no matter how many videos and podcasts and albums of music that I had prepared for these days, boredom also does creep in if you allow it to. So I can only imagine what she was going through, just, and beyond. But anyways, so Thursday was most certainly a difficult day for the length of it, but it was also kind of the mountain peak of the week, because then Friday was a 4 to 5 hour day, and then Saturday was a nice quick hour, I believe. The medicine delivery was 30 minutes, so it was about an hour and a half in total for pre-treatment, delivery of the medication, and then preparing to go home. So that was my 6 days of chemo in a row. The delivery of what I was soon to find out of medications or poison. Garbage. Important garbage, but garbage nonetheless. Waste. And waste is how and what I felt. Things started to creep in ever so slightly, I would say, on day -1, the Sunday, after all of this. But I didn't let that get me down. I knew that at this point, this coming week, that Matt was actually going to be coming in for day 0, which is going to be the infusion day, December 9th. So December 9th, the next Monday, I knew that Matt was going to be there. And so that really helped me, again, kind of mentally and emotionally, which then translated into a physical kind of boost. We went out, we did some shopping together, which really helped me kind of get out of the verbo that we were in, because I could feel it creep up over the week of chemo, but especially the week after, where I had to spend a lot more time in the verbo. I was quickly realizing that my distaste and my placement of one with another, there's a word for it and I'm forgetting it right now, I apologize, but my placement of those feelings and that time in the chair and having the chemo delivered, I started to tie that into the house pretty darn quick. And so having Matt there was most certainly a relief. Really, really positively, absolutely, rivetingly got me through my time there, but certainly slowed down a little bit on the timeline. So we have December 9th, the next Monday, is the infusion day. And this day here, the infusion was going to take, it was like 5-10 minutes, but I had to have an observation period, of course, of I believe it was a couple hours to where we just wanted to make sure that my body didn't have an adverse reaction, even though this was an autologous stem cell transplant. So the stem cells are my stem cells. There still is a minute chance of graft versus host disease to occur. My body could have still rejected the stem cells, but again, we weren't expecting that. But we still had to make sure, within this time period that nothing happened, and then thankfully nothing adverse occurred. Otherwise, I would not be sitting here talking to you right now. I would be I would be in a much different position. One that we don't need to dwell on too much. So that day went well. And then it began. The time for me to feel like dead weight. The time for me to feel like a bag of sand. Like a fallen tree that's going to receive absolutely zero help. I had help, but certainly felt like it regardless. That's where, the 12th, the 13th, the 14th of December were coming, and I was immediately starting to fall under that gut-wrenching left hook, liver shot feeling started, and things took a very nasty turn. And for sanity purposes, that's where I'm going to be ending our story for the moment, because it's still gut-wrenching. And we'll discuss that time on another episode. But in recap of my time going through the beam regiment of a bone marrow transplant, there were a lot of different envisions that had presented themselves to me before, during, and after that time. What had presented itself before was, again, a lot of anxiety, the punctuation and attention, sort of stand to attention of insecurities. All of that being some type of proponent to increase the velocity of a hurricane that I was feeling of unknown. There we go. A hurricane of unknowing. A hurricane of unknowingness. One of those will work. I didn't have too many issues, but there were moments that I had lost control and lost my grip on a firm and standing representation of reality in these times. I had for some odd reason let go, not knowing whether it was a good decision or not, or sometimes it wasn't voluntary at all, of falling into the strong winds of that hurricane, being whipped around. And I say hurricane and not tornado because, I don't know, hurricanes are just a much larger beast of themselves in terms of size, and that represents more of what I had visioned during those times, because due to its sheer size, you really get lost, and you are unable to keep track of where you are when you're flying through it. You may return back to the same spot within the shape of the cyclone, but when you look down, you don't see the same spot as you did before when you started that revolution. So that's why I like to use the term hurricane, because it's very aggressive. It can come out of nowhere, and it can sweep you off your feet pretty darn quick if you're not careful. And this hurricane of the unknown does not care where you were at in that moment. And it will seek out the opportunity to render you virtually useless in the moment that it takes you. And when I say useless, I mean unable to seemingly fight back, unable to control yourself in any moment that you find yourself while you were in it. It really does use its forceful winds to knock you around and to make you seem lost. I know that there were, again, a few days that it was not voluntary of me falling into this maelstrom, that I caught myself damning myself for allowing such a slip up to occur. I started to succumb to the inner voice in its malevolent ways, in its times of really twisting and turning the knife and making sure that when you look down, you have this perception, and almost of a mirage, that it's your hand on the handle of the knife. So then you turn to yourself and you start damning yourself for what you're doing, and why would you do that? Why would you allow yourself to figuratively harm yourself and fall into this, again, this absolute maelstrom of emotions and feelings and insecurities and and ultimately not being able to process and deal with the unknown. But what I did to start the descent and find myself back on Earth was, one, finally being able to control my reactions to it and remember what we do here at Impossible Performance. And that's reminding ourselves that it's okay to face the impossible. We are capable of facing the impossible. And that I should be facing the impossible. Reminding myself that I have a duty not to just the community, not to just my friends and family, but to myself. That even when things are spiraling out of control, that I can have some sort of grip on the situation. Secondly, I remind myself of how bad those storms were through my first few times of treatment. Storms that did their damage. Storms that not only hurt myself, but hurt others. Storms that caused me to lose grip on the situation at hand and ruined a lot of things for me. Losing people from my lives and losing moments. Present and future. Moments that I'll never get to experience. All because I wasn't willing. I wasn't willing to be impossible in order to do the impossible. And there can be a lot of disdain, disgust, and hatred that you can cast upon yourself. For having let that happen. But we have to learn from those mistakes. We have to be willing to not only be honest with ourselves, but to be willing to cause a little bit of pain, but discomfort when discussing that honesty with yourself. It's going to hurt. But I promise you that the pain you feel when being honest is a lot easier to handle than the potential pain of not dealing with it in the moment and not being honest with yourself. Dealing with the unknown and being comfortable within it is absolutely paramount for you to move forward. And I hope with your following of us here at Impossible Performance and your following of this series here is that you realize that, and that maybe somehow, some way, in some manner, I can help you get out of that storm. Because you can. You can get a grip. You can find a way to reestablish that control onto your life. If I can do it, you can do it too. And in the end, you'll realize how much fun it is actually to dance around in that ongoing evolution of the unknown. So I just want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Again, I hope you find something helpful from it. And if you do, share it with others. Share it with somebody that you may think it can be helpful for them. And yeah. So again, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining. I really enjoy doing this series. As I hope to give back to those who have given me some kind of light that is just absolutely gleaming into the future. Because us here at Impossible Performance are building a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth, and constant pursuit of the impossible. Take care. And as always, be impossible.